All right, Joe, welcome to the podcast, or I should say, welcome back.
Thanks for having me back.
Thanks for coming back. I mean, so for those who don't know, because I've had some people like, hey, why don't you get Joe on? And I'm like, well, this is a weird sense of deja vu because that was exactly how I got you on the podcast in the first place. Like, who should I interview? And then like four people said, you should talk to Joe. And I'm like, all right, fine. After like the third or fourth one, we recorded an episode and it was great. And we even talked for like 45 minutes afterward. And turns out we know some of the same people from like years ago, which,
Oh,
that's what
really?
happens when you live in the Midwest. That's
Oh, yeah.
standard quo. Yeah.
It's all
Um,
one big town. It's
it's
all
all,
one big small town.
it's all one big small town. That's basically Cincinnati. Um, and then, uh, my biggest fear finally came to fruition is that the audio was screwed up, but it wasn't you for some reason. It was me. And it didn't come through my headphones like the first time, so it's like I didn't notice it until I had plugged it in. And then I sound like C3PO overdosing on fentanyl. It was just, it was not good. And I couldn't even use AI to salvage that. Even my brother, who's
Oh,
fixed audio before, he's fixed some bad audio of mine personally. He's like, yeah, this is insalvageable. So I told you, it's like, all right, we should I'll try to salvage it, hopefully, And you're like, well, we could just redo if you want. I'm like, oh, how gracious of you, man. I appreciate it.
oh yeah, I'm happy to do it. And what's funny, I told Ashley Lawhorn I was like, I'm starting to get a complex. I said he's released a bunch of episodes since our interview. I was like, was I that bad? Like, I was like, maybe I was horrible, and like he doesn't know how to like bridge that. Like that, Joe, we just can't show what you said to the public. I did a probably a 10-minute rant on Sundance, and
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
of course
Well, it
that news
turns I don't
broke.
think it's actually coming to Cincinnati now that I think about it. It's not. It's
It's
like
not
Boulder,
now. No,
Colorado.
they chose Boulder, but at the
Why?
time when we recorded, it was still Cincinnati was still in the running.
It was.
So
It was. I don't know what. Like, is Boulder? I don't. I'm not. I know it's like big for. It's like the
ski
place in
vacations.
Colorado, but it's just I don't know
It's
why.
a lot of these like uh, you know elite Hollywood people. They use Sundance as their ski vacation at the same time as networking and
Okay.
distribution stuff. And I'm just gonna be honest. The second I heard that like they were chattering about that, I was like, oh, Cincinnati has no chance because if it was really about the distribution and the event itself, Cincinnati's a no-brainer. Um, but when you bring in the ski stuff, Boulder's right near some nice ski places. Park City, very heavy ski town. Cincinnati, no one's going to go to Perfect North
Yeah.
from
No,
out of
Perfect
town,
North's
at
like
least.
two
So
like 2 hours away too.
yeah,
It's not even.
that's
It's not
not.
even convenient at all.
Yeah, as soon as I started hearing the chatter about that, I was like, it's not coming here.
Are you disappointed that it's not coming to Cincinnati? Because like I talked to Johnny and like originally he had like mixed feelings about it coming to Cincinnati.
I've been preaching this from my hill. I was talking to a couple Cincinnati-based directors of photography this past week, and we were all just kind of chatting about how it coming here would be good for the city. Happy to see that, but it doesn't do anything for film. Um, it does not legitimize us in the eyes of Hollywood. It doesn't legitimize us in the eyes of the actual like studio system. To them, we're all a bunch of bumpkins.
Yeah.
Uh, that's why when they come here, they take our incredibly talented DPs and they're suddenly like ACs and gaffers. And if we're lucky, they're gaffers. That's why
I think
our
Ben actually
directors,
remarked on that. Ben McLean.
yeah, and it's correct because it's like these people are more than talented enough to be working in the studio system or a Hollywood system with real budgets, but Hollywood doesn't see it that way.
Yeah. Well,
So
Hollywood's also
it,
struggling right now, like
it
big time.
is. Well, and more indie movies are getting made. I mean, we just had an indie movie win Best Picture at the Oscars, but it doesn't change the fact that it's got huge financiers behind it, and
Hmm.
whether or not it was dependent on a studio, it's still dependent on big distribution companies, and so there's still a level of you know they're not ready for the indie cinema of the Midwest. I mean, as I've
Hmm.
said before, they treat Atlanta like the redheaded stepchild between New York and LA. Atlanta's a legit market. They're a bigger market than we are. So what do you think that makes them think of us?
Right, right. I'm surprised.
You
I
know,
don't
it's
know why it
unfortunate.
was Atlanta ever in the running for Sundance? Like that would have made more sense. Like if I had heard Cincinnati had gotten or Atlanta had been chosen over Cincinnati, I'd be like, oh well, yeah, of course, that makes total sense. But Boulder,
I
Colorado, it's
don't
like I
know.
don't get it.
I'm not sure if Atlanta was ever in the running, but I just, the way since they don't view Cincinnati as a real market aside from our tax credit. They
Yeah,
see that as the only advantage to come to Ohio. They can still consider us a flyover state.
yeah. Well, although I don't want this to be a redo. Um, I would prefer also if you did reintroduce yourself and how you got started in filmmaking, because there are some people who do watch it and don't know you.
Sure, sure. Thank you. So I started making movies when I was in high school, probably about 15 or 16. I got a digital camera. Remember those like flip pocket cams that were out years ago? It was like,
Those
you know,
camcorders?
square. Yeah, they were like square camcorders that had a USB port on the side.
Yeah.
They shot in like 480. They were terrible. I got one of those for my birthday one year, and I started making sketches with my friends. And I was homeschooled, so I had a lot of free time on my hands. And so while my friends were at school, I'd finish up my school real quick. I'd write a script. They'd get out of school. We'd shoot. The next day after I was done with my schoolwork, I would start editing and piecing together these sketches. And it kind of turned into me really enjoying making films. And while I was playing music in some bands and stuff at the time, film was always kind of like my passion on the side. But I never thought it was viable.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I decided to go to film school, a lot of people in my family would tell me like, "There's no jobs in that. There's no jobs in that." And I had a friend who kind of kicked me in the butt and kind of told me, you know, Joe, if you don't take this chance now, like if you don't, you're going to be 40 and sitting at your desk at a job that you hate, just ready to blow your brains out. And because she's like, I know you. You're anxious, you're depressed, you're going to do something you hate just because it's the safe route. She was like, why don't you, pursue it? And guess what? Give filmmaking a try for the next 5 to 10 years. If it doesn't work out, she was like, great. Then you can work 20 years at a desk job and kill yourself at your desk at 50.
Right.
And it was harsh to hear that, and I was really annoyed at the conversation at the time. But I really credit her heavily with me pursuing film because it was the kind of kick in the butt I needed to get started. And then I went to film school and I found out I didn't know anything about film. Um,
Yeah.
and so I made a lot of friends and started making movies, and everything I made was terrible. And I just continued to try to get better and better.
There's so many made up courses in film school too. It's like that's like if you ever seen like padding, like accountant padding on the back end, like that there's a lot of padded courses in film
Oh
school.
yeah,
Like the
in the 4 year
historicity
program.
of this time
Oh yeah.
period, it's like I could watch 5 movies that were Oscar acclaimed from any decade
Yeah.
and then learn what I need to learn on a general sense of what was going on. Like you don't it's not near it's like the technical side can be very complicated, but storytelling, if you got a knack for it, like you'll figure it out within 2 or 3 projects.
Oh, I agree. I did. I did go to a 2 year program, so it was mostly focused on the technical side. So I didn't have to waste too much time. A lot of it was just like, hey, learn how to not be a completely crappy editor. Um, hey, and learn how to actually do 3 point lighting instead of just pointing a light at somebody. Um,
Vroom.
Stuff like that. Yeah. So I learned quite a bit in my Cincinnati State program. Learned a lot more by just going out and doing it. But made good friends and good contacts there, who to this day still send me work. And there to this day there are people I went there with that I see out in the field, and they're all working full time jobs or freelancing on big sets. So
Hmm.
pretty cool to see.
Yeah. After I think it was either 1 or 2 weeks. It was within the time window of me potentially still releasing that other episode. I met you actually at Johnny's Film Festival,
Yeah.
Catalano Film Festival, and dude, you're tall as hell. I was not expecting that. I thought I was not
Yeah.
expecting that at all.
Most people aren't. I'm actually the shortest of my brothers though.
No, bro, I'm
And
scared.
in our family, it's my brother Pete's 6'7", my brother Ben is 6'5", I'm 6'4", and then our little sister is 6'1.5". we tell her she's 6'1", but she really wants to hold back and only be 6 feet.
Bro,
Uh,
that's a Viking movie ready to be made right there. Like, come
yeah,
on.
there's there's a lot of the Dutch in our line, and they were very tall people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, when I saw you at the film festival, it's like I also saw. I got a little bit of a general sense of like how many people know you because like a lot of people started clustering around you, just started orbiting. Like you had your own. And this is gonna sound weird, like you had your own gravitational field, and that's not a big joke. It's just like, oh, I'm talking about the social implications here. You probably had like 4 or 5 people around you, and you're like, hey, yeah, it's nice to see you. Let's kiss some babies,
It does
uh,
feel like that sometimes. It feels like kissing babies and shaking hands, and but like that's part of the community aspect of it, and
yeah, for sure. I'm
you
not
know,
knocking it, but like, it is kind of
yeah, oh
funny.
yeah, absolutely, it is. It's in I try to be approachable with people because at film festivals you run into people in all sorts of levels. There
Hmm.
are people at festivals that I go to, and I'm like, oh man, I shouldn't even. I have imposter syndrome. I shouldn't even be in the same room as this person.
Right.
And then I'll run into someone who just made their first film, and this is the first festival they've ever been in, and I try to make them feel elevated and welcome and excited to be there because for example, there was one filmmaker who made me feel that way when I went to a festival. It was the first time I competed in the 48-hour film project when I wasn't in college. Like, so I graduated school. I didn't team up with classmates. I decided to enter the 48-hour film festival, and there was a local filmmaker named Maki Dapp, who's from Nashville, actually.
I
He
met
makes
him.
commercials. And Maki, I love Maki. Um,
I was a PA on one
I
of his
just
commercial shoots. Yeah.
yeah, he is a wonderful person and so talented. And when I was like, I need to go introduce myself to him, and I was a nervous because I come across very extroverted, but I'm actually an anxious ball of depression and anxiety all the time.
You got
And
skills.
so I was like trying. I was like, how do I go talk to this guy? And so I walked up to like Maki. I wanted to introduce myself. He turned around. He's like, "You're Joe Cox," and I went, "You know me?" He said, "You directed the Narcoleptic." He said, "That's one of my favorite films in this festival this year." And I was like, "Oh, that blew my mind that he actually noted my name, noticed who I was, and liked my movie." And it was a really crappy, low budget 48-hour film. It was about
Hmm.
a it was about a aspiring serial killer in its like 60 minutes style interview where he is upset because he can't kill people because he gets too excited and his narcolepsy takes over. And it was called the Narcoleptic. So it was like a dark comedy, and Maki was like, "I just love that movie, man." And his whole team ended up voting for us for audience choice, so that we won audience choice.
Hmm.
And I was blown away by that. In their movie, won the whole thing, and it deserved to win audience choice. Their movie was the best movie in the past, easily.
Mm.
It was like just tiers above where we all were. Um, but there was a sense that he made me feel welcome, seen, and heard, like I was his peer, not like I was learning from him. And it elevated me. Like it gave me a confidence booster I didn't know I needed. So I've tried to approach festivals in a similar way, and just try to treat everybody with like the sense of like, let's elevate you, let's get you excited and amped up about your project, no matter what level it's at, because ultimately you don't know what kind of positivity in those kind of situations could bring the next filmmaker up and
Hmm.
give them that boost they need to make the next project better.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean I'm not willing to be critical and and constructive feedback and talk real with people, but when we go to those things, it's a big deal that you got in. It's a big deal that you completed a film, because films are freaking hard to make. Um, and so, at festivals, it does feel like I'm kissing babies and shaking hands, but it's like I'm trying to make sure that there's positivity around it
Right.
because it's a big deal. It's
Yeah.
fun. Even at small festivals or big festivals, it's the same. It's fun.
Your film actually won some awards at the Catalana Film Festival.
Yes, Ashley and Kennedy both won Best Actress and Best Supporting Actress, and I was beaming with pride all night. I say all the time, I would rather lose every individual award for me if it means my teammates get elevated,
Mm.
and I truly mean that. This was exciting for them because this was the first time Ashley or Kennedy had ever won an award for
Oh,
acting
really?
on screen. Yes, which just blows my mind because they're both phenomenal. That's particularly in that short. But particularly Ashley, she's been doing it long enough that I would have expected her to have won somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
Kennedy's newer to screen acting. She's been only been in a handful of things, so I wasn't surprised it was her first time. But and I was so thrilled that she got that win out of the way because it's kind of nice to get the monkey off your back, you know, a little bit, and get that first win because it kind of feels like it eats at you a little bit. Like, oh man, maybe I could win one someday.
Right.
Um, so I was so stoked for them. I was just beaming. They were so incredibly
Do you get
excited.
juiced and encouraged, when after attending a film festival, even if you're not necessarily in it, because, there's a lot of suffering in filmmaking.
Yeah, I would say I get juiced a little bit from it. I get excited to make the next thing.
Mm.
But I think there's a part of me too that like I said, I'm not as extroverted as I come across, and so I feel absolutely exhausted and don't want to talk to people for several days afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
So
I
there's
feel
kind of a
that.
mix. Sometimes I'm amped up creatively, and then sometimes I'm like, oh man, if I talk to another person tonight, I'm going to die. Um, and it's not because I don't love talking to people; it's just I start to feel overwhelmed.
Do you feel like
So
that
there's a
helps
little
your
bit of that.
flow state once you get that little juice and encouragement? So once you get into whatever it is you're currently working on, which I know a little bit about what you're currently working on behind the closed
Mhm.
doors, that's okay.
Yeah.
Um, uh, do you feel like that gives you an extra layer of focus that you didn't have before?
Yes and no. I think it definitely watching a movie with an audience, especially indie movies, gives me encouragement that hey, there is a hunger out there for this and for this authenticity and even small town cinema. Um, because sometimes I question whether or not anybody's like if I'm making a movie for an audience that doesn't exist. Um,
Mm.
because sometimes I think when we're making a short, we're like, does anybody care about this? I care about it, so the odds are somebody will, right? Um, so yeah, I think there's a little bit of that. There's a hey, that you watch people enjoy something, you're like, oh man, yeah, there's an audience for this kind of thing, and my movie could be at it next time. My this audience might enjoy one of my
Mm.
projects. So I think there's a little bit of that. It
You
does.
also get
It
to see
doesn't.
what resonates though with an audience and what doesn't.
Mhm.
There's a even though nobody's well, granted, if it's comedy or has some comedic themes to it, then maybe there's some laughs in the crowd. But even then, for some reason, there's like this collective unconscious like communication that goes on inside an audience's mind when they're watching the exact same thing, and you can feel what exactly worked and what didn't.
Yeah, yeah, I agree and it's funny because I think it's harder to see that when it's your own project. Um, for example, a few years ago, we did a movie called A Balanced Breakfast for Winter Film, and it won Winter Film that year. And I it was the first time I kind of created like a family movie. It was like a family comedy, and it's heartwarming and kind of sweet and saccharine, and it's a father-daughter love story. It's kind of my ode to how much I love my daughters.
Hmm.
Um, and I, I did not think it was anything. I thought it was kind of cutesy. I thought it was kind of fun. I thought our lead actress would definitely win something. I thought there were a couple things I thought we might win. And then it just resonated with people. And we ended up winning 6 out of 11 nominations at Winter Film and Audience Choice, which made 7 wins on the night, including Best Film, Best Screenwriting, Best Directing, Best Actress, Sound, a bunch of different stuff. And when I walked away from it, like I was talking to people afterwards, and I couldn't believe the way it made people feel. Like they were like to have something that you wrote or created that you just kind of thought was, oh, it's a one-off. That's what resonated with people, and people talked about it all night and talked about the story of this little girl and this locket, and for them to keep coming up to me and just telling me that they felt it and they felt the emotion and they felt the weight of this father-daughter relationship. And the theme that year was balance, and it was I kind of played it on multiple parts. I played a work-life balance and the balance of youth and age and the balance of a relationship with your child, all of these things incorporating with each other. and I didn't think about it being that deep when I saw the balance on the surface level, and I just tried to pull from what I knew, and then I didn't realize that it would actually resonate with people in a way that they would remember it and care about it at the end of the night. And that was kind of overwhelming. That was one of those nights where I was amped up, but I was also a little bit like choked up because I just didn't realize that people cared that deeply or could care that deeply about something that I wrote. And so, and I know that was a long tangent there, but it, those a live audience like that reminds me sometimes why we do this and why we use film to connect. So yeah, those events definitely give me a little bit of amped up, and but it lets me know kind of what people are craving and how they connected with something because it may not be the same way I connected with it.
Right. Well, for the next question, like, although you can't completely remove your bias because you're in the community and you are a filmmaker, do you in the past few years, like roughly five or so, it's recent enough. Do you think that the film community has grown both in not necessarily notoriety, but also just the awareness that a lot of this stuff is going on, particularly in the local Cincinnati to Columbus scene?
Yes and no. I think the general public's getting more aware that we exist. As more events are happening and as more locals start actually producing even low budget stuff that hits newspapers. Um, but I also think that it's always existed, but with the advancement in like prosumer technology and prosumer cameras and the as nice cameras have become cheaper, I think it's been easier for the quality to uptick so much that it's become more viable and more noticeable for people. So I think there's always been a strong film community. I just don't think anybody had the resources to make the stuff they wanted to make until
Mm-hmm.
recently.
Yeah. You've how many films have you made? When I checked out your IMDb, like there's a fairly long list. But roughly
Oh
how
man,
much of that was dark comedy versus other categories?
I think all of my films have a little bit of dark comedy in them. Even my dramas have dark humor. Even my lighthearted movies have a little bit of dark humor. I mean, even A Balanced Breakfast has a joke about hookers, and it's supposed to be a family movie. So, um, a joke about hookers and belly dancers, which was not, something you'd expect necessarily in a traditional family movie. But I mean, I don't know how many films I've made. Tens of them. Um, because it's all been short films. I've not done my first feature yet. I've just kind of been waiting for the right opportunity and not to take advantage of my friends because all my friends are willing to come work on things for dirt cheap to nothing for no budget just because we enjoy making movies together. But when you're making a feature, it's just such a big project that
Yeah,
people
it's
got to get
difficult to
paid.
ask them to commit freedom that
Yeah,
like free time just for a feature, because that's going to take up like at
absolutely.
least the shooting schedule is like probably going to, for an indie film is going to be like what between 2 to 4 weeks, something like that.
Oh yeah, easily. If you can squeeze one in 2 weeks, you might be able to squeeze it, but it's like,
What kind of movie are
what's
you
the
going to
quality going to be?
get?
Yeah, more time, more money, the better the quality. And get what you pay for. As my grandfather always reminded me on anything.
Hmm.
Um, so I've made a lot of them, and it's been a lot of trial and error because I just try to make something that I currently want to make. Whether or not I have the budget or resources, I just attempt it because each film has kind of got a purpose for me on trying a new technique or trying a new type of story or a new type of genre or playing, with new things that will help me grow and learn.
Yeah. What makes an idea worth pursuing and giving your free time to?
Mm, If I can't stop thinking about it.
Hmm.
There are some movies there was a movie that we were in pre-production for I don't know a month or so called Hell is Real, and I really liked the story, but I kept reading the script and I didn't care, and I was like, it's still a good script, and it's like it's a story I think is worth telling someday, but I didn't care about it,
Hmm.
and I had already cast it. We were starting to set shooting dates, and I just called my producer Erica, and I said, Erica, I don't think I care about this movie. and I don't think I should make it right now if I don't care about it, because I'm not passionate about it. And so I ended up going back to the drawing board, using the same cast and crew, and we made a short film called Squalor that's in post production right now. It's finishing up VFX this week and sound, and it should hopefully be out late spring. Um, and it was something that it's not even that this movie had more heart to it, but it had themes and things I wanted to explore and that I was more excited about. And it was an idea I couldn't stop thinking about. And, that's how I felt about Stoned. It's how I felt about Chocolate Milk, even A Balanced Breakfast when I was writing it during Winter Film. I couldn't stop thinking about it.
Why do you think the
things I wanted to
passion for
explore.
that particular idea left you?
Um, I think probably I kind of wrote it about grief, and I had the last few years. I lost my grandfather in 2020. We were really close, and that was it's been 5 years now. And 5 years this month, and I've grieved him plenty, and I don't think I was in an emotional state to where I could do the story justice, probably, because I wasn't grieving anymore. So kind of the idea originally came to me when I was grieving, and um, and I'll give you a loose synopsis of that story. It was about two sisters who they inherit their father's ashes, and their father was a controversial figure in the community, and they're trying to deal with that death and loving their dad for being their dad, but trying to be okay with their own opinions of him at the same time. And so it's got some dark humor in it, but it's also like it's a lot of grief. And it was not a film I think I was in an emotional state to make at the moment. And I just kept saying, I don't want to make this yet. I'm not there. And maybe it's something I'll make someday still, but but it may be one of those ideas that just sits, they turn into something else.
Right. Well, a film like that is rich ground to start introducing esoteric elements as a metaphor for what they're actually talking about. So there's that type of, because I could like, I'm just kind of imagining what the dialogue might look like between those two characters, and then because of the topic that that they're discussing, that sort of thing is almost, if the right elements in terms of how you tell that story, if you were to like maybe take it slightly in a more artsy direction, like in the middle of the scene while they're talking, then like that might be something I think actually that could win. That's ripe ground for rewards. If you can hit the nail on the head, right?
Yeah, I think it's something I would have to probably be in the right headspace tonally to make work. And I don't think I was in that headspace, and I didn't feel like I was going to do it justice. I think the script needs some more passes, but I think the root of the story is there for sure.
Just read Crime and Punishment; that'll get you right into the headspace.
I also think that logistically, at its core, I wanted it to be a road trip movie, because the idea is that they were supposed to be traveling back to Ohio to spread their dad's ashes in a place that they were special for him. And neither of them really wants to do this. And so they have to kind of figure things out together, as one daughter remembers him kind of fondly and the other one remembers him negatively. And we're trying to get a sense of who he really was from their kind of conversations and their adventure along the way. So logistically, it was going to be hard, and so I kept even rerouting it to not being a road trip movie, and I don't think it quite worked without the road trip. So there's a lot of reasons why I kind of lost focus on that one and decided on Squalor instead. Squalor was a pocketed idea I had years ago, and the loose synopsis of that Squalor is about a girl whose father has gone missing in town, and he is the local town joke because he's a Bigfoot hunter. And she enlists the help of a disgraced cop to help her track her dad down. So, and that spawned from an idea I had written in my idea book, like probably 5 or 6 years ago, um, for a feature. And
Mm-hmm.
I just every now and then I just have a inkling or a little sprinkle of creativity. Excuse me, a little sprinkling of creativity, and I just write it down in my notes app and leave it there. And
Right.
sometimes I come back to it, and sometimes I don't. I mean, Stone started out as literally a 3-line joke that I wrote. You know,
Yeah, I remember that.
I wrote it down. I just said, it was like March of 2023. I just said, two stoners are so high they forgot, they think they killed somebody. And that was the joke. And then the whole movie it was supposed to be them trying to, get rid of a body they think is dead. And then I was like, how do you make that a story? And then I had to go back and actually go to the drawing board and write it as a story.
Mm-hmm. Well, for you as a director, what department do you find yourself giving more time and focus to on set in order to convey the style of storytelling that you want?
Oh, I mean, I probably communicate with my actors most. Because to me, getting performance down and tone down in their delivery and emotions is so vital. Because I trust my DPs to really help me get that tone. I can tell them exactly what I want the scene to be really quickly, and then I go in, and as long as I can get my actors to where they need to be, I think that's what sets it apart. It's just because you can have fantastic lighting and fantastic camera work and fantastic audio, and if the performance isn't there, you can get the sense of what the performance is supposed to be, and it makes that performance weaker. So if I can get my actors to the level of the cinematography and audio and work that my crew is doing, then I think it elevates everybody. So then we can actually, so then their performances then are accentuated by good performance, but then amplified by good lighting and good audio, and
Have you
but
done
at the
any
same
acting
time,
yourself, curiously?
go ahead, go again.
Have you done any acting yourself, curiously? Because I know some directors like to take acting classes if they haven't done acting in order to figure out better how to communicate with their actors and what actually goes through the mental process of that.
I did stage acting in high school, and I enjoyed that for the most part. I like the entertainment aspect of it. I liked exploring characters and the comedy of it. And then I did on-screen stuff in my early YouTube days, and sketches that you will never see. They're on YouTube, but you'll never find them.
They're all private.
Um, Surprisingly, they're not, because I don't have access to that account and I can't get in
Oh, you just don't share
to
it.
go remove them. So if somebody would be rewarded if they go and find my very old, terrible YouTube videos from high school. But I did act on camera for those a little bit, and what I was doing was very crappy, over the top, not any real acting.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I really learned how to communicate with an actor. I didn't even learn that in college. 2017, and I may have told you this story before, but I'll share it for the podcast. I was working with a local veteran actor named John Newkirk, great actor, fantastic guy. And this was kind of one of the moments that kind of changed my perspective on directing. And I realized that I didn't know anything. I was directing for a 48-hour film project. The windows are always clean in Portland, and we won that year with Cincinnati. But on set, John was the producer on it and lead actor, and he was like, "Hey Joe, what am I supposed to be? Kind of what am I actually trying to say in this scene?" And I repeated the line back to him like a rube. And
Oh,
he
you
just
did a
said,
line
"I know
read?
what the." I didn't give him the line read like how I wanted him to say it. I just gave him. I thought he was asking me for his line. I didn't understand his question, and he looked at me and says, "I know what the bleeping line is. I don't know what the bleeping line means." And I was like, "Oh." He's like, "What am I actually like? What am I supposed to be feeling when I say it?
The
Like, what do
subtext.
I say?" It was the first time it hit me that, oh, my job is to communicate the subtext, not to just make sure things run smoothly. Oh,
Mm-hmm.
I was very new to all of that, and I looked at him and I just said, "Oh, well, the scene is between father and daughter, and he's afraid she doesn't believe in him." And he's like, "Oh, okay, well, I didn't get that. Now I know." And then he nailed it the next take, and I was like, "Oh, that's directing? You
Uh,
gotta be kidding me! It's that easy?" And I was just, it's getting your actors and you on the same page on what this whole thing means. And I know that sounds so simple and it's stupid that I I should have caught it sooner. But in my early 20s, I was like 21. I had no idea what I was doing. Um, I might have been even 23 or something. I don't know. It was pretty early in my career. It was like 2017. Um, and I was like, that was the first time I really realized how to direct. And so the rest of the movie, I started using that. And I won Best Director that year at that film festival, and I was really excited about that because that was the first time I won an award for directing, but it was also the first time I ever thought I actually deserved an award.
mm,
Um, and that's not me saying I'm all high and mighty, but I was really proud of my work, and really excited about the vision of the project. And so I really credit John with being a good veteran actor and, not being afraid to speak up to a young director who, clearly was in over his head.
right. After that experience, did that change the way you write dialogue, curiously, or affect it in any way?
Um, yeah, I would say yes. You know, Thinking back on it, yes. I don't think I would have said that before you asked that question. Um, they did kind of spark a start where I did start focusing more on the subtext. I always joke that my first draft of a script is all exposition.
Mm,
Um, and
guilty.
Ben McClane was teasing me about that. He's like, man, wait, all your lines are on the nose, and I'm like, oh, I know, but I do that on purpose because in the first draft, I'm saying what I need to remember needs to be done
Mm,
in this scene. Then on my second pass, I'm like, all right, now how do I say that same thing without saying it?
mm,
And how do I make that the subtext? And then I'm like, okay, now that the subtext is in the scene, what can I remove that layers and colors and paints my characters and texturizes them and makes them feel like people and not, like they're regurgitating lines. And so I figure out what needs to stay and what doesn't on my third pass. And then by fourth pass, I'm starting to see my characters living and breathing as real characters and not just spouting exposition.
right. Well, actually, funny you mentioned that because my my strength and weakness is the direct opposite of that. I tend to write a little too indirectly, and
Mm-hmm.
the weakness that you get from that is you end up pigeonholing an actor into giving a very specific performance, and so there's a real balance of like, well, this line is really basic, but the thing I eventually had to learn, and maybe you can speak to your own experience on this, is you gotta, when you're writing dialogue, you want to leave a little bit of room to actually let the actor be able to turn the dialogue into something, not just reveal what's there,
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and that's big too because before that kind of moment with John, I would very much want my actors to do what I was thinking in my head. And then I realized pretty soon after that actor director relationships are more of a partnership than a boss employee dynamic. And I tell this to a lot of actors now in our initial like phone calls and sometimes in pre-production. I'll reach out to an actor and be like, okay, cool. What do we need to do together, to birth this character? You and I are going to parent this character. So there's going to be a little bit of my vision and a little bit of yours because you have to have something that you latch onto to bring an authenticity to the performance. But it needs to fit inside the vision of my world. So how can we both get what we want here, right? That brings authenticity, but also fits in my vision. So I don't go in married to what a character needs to look and feel like. I go in with options. I'm like, what routes can this character take that will make my actor buy in? Because if they are not bought in, my audience isn't going to buy in. So I get that kind of pre-production, and I know you've interviewed Ashley and you've interviewed Brandy, Ashley Lawhorn and Brandy Botkin, both amazing actresses, and I have these kind of conversations with them, like, what can you latch on to, and try to build from there, so that we both are really pleased with the final product. And it means that on set, there's not a lot of feedback I have to give, except for trying to set that pace and that tone, because we've done the character work ahead of time.
It's more about tone
So
and
then on
tempo.
set, yeah, exactly. It's about, hey, you're holding back here. I want you're at like 6, bring it to an 8, and then when we get to a 10, it'll feel like a 10. And then versus, or hey, you're just too energetic for this. I see her in the scene as being more, depleted. She's exhausted, so let's bring that back. And I use the metaphor all the time that I'm an engineer driving a train, and my actor's steering it back and forth. And my job is just to be like, hey, let's get back on the tracks here. I'm willing to let you push it. But if you're too far, just trust me to bring you back into the vision. Or if you're underselling it, I let me push you over the top. My job is just to keep you on those guardrails, right? And then let them go full steam ahead.
Is there an aspect of filmmaking that you think you would benefit from taking more direct control of?
Could you repeat that?
Is there an aspect of filmmaking that you think at least either your style of filmmaking or your tendencies as a director would benefit from by taking more direct control instead of it being more of a yin and yang dance between this and the crew or this and the actors? Is there a benefit you think by maybe sometimes you should crack the whip and just be as not tyrannical, but being very specific with how you want something and just being like, you got to trust me on this?
Yeah. So there are aspects that I do that already with. There are times I'm married to something tonally, and sometimes maybe an actor disagrees with that tone, and I do have to step in and say, hey, I appreciate what you're trying to bring to the table.
Oh, I got to
but
pause you
it
real
does
quick.
not
Hold on.
fit.
Can you send yourself a little bit more?
Oh, my bad.
You're over a little bit
Sorry.
right there.
I was leaning here. I was leaning in close and thinking.
You've been slowly sliding toward the edge of the table a little bit,
Yeah. I was getting excited. So yeah, I think there's definitely a time and place where I will crack the whip and try to, like, this is my way or the highway. It has happened. There have been, and I won't name names, but there's been some actors where I just, we're comfortable with each other, and they're willing to try something new, but it might be completely off the rails from my vision, and I have to, politely say, hey, I love what you're trying to do, I love what you're trying to bring, but it doesn't fit, and I'm going to need you to just go back to my vision, my script, my words. I try not to be married to my dialogue, but there are times where things I've put in there are there for a reason, and maybe the actor hasn't caught on to that yet. And so that'll be a time where I'll contextualize that, like, hey, this line comes into play later because of this. There's it's maybe metaphorical, or maybe it's poetic to something else that happens later or is said later. So sometimes it's vital there, and the actor may have not picked up on that. So I'll try to get them back on.
What would be a good example of that from your personal experience?
So at least disagreeing with an actor on a moment.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, here's a good example, and it'll be a project you guys will see soon with Squalor. I was working with the very talented Robert Walker. I love Robert. Robert is like borderline a method actor, and he brings a lot of energy to the part. He is quick to add dialogue. He's quick to reshape the dialogue to fit his vision of this character, of what makes him feel like the character, right? And I'm not against that. When I bring in Robert, I expect that, because he brings all this energy and care to the part, but he's not too proud for me to step in and say, Robert, what you're saying here is too much, or hey, you're actually taking away from the point of the scene. So in the scene that he's in, he's playing this kind of prepper sleazebag that's dealing with our hero cop and our teenage girl, and he's being real creepy and real subtle. And he had quite a few. He had several improvised lines that I really liked, but I was at the end. I was like, "Hey, Robert, you're doing too much. I want you to end this scene just with silence and staring." Because if you add all of this, it doesn't give me any room to work with it. It doesn't, you know. You're also drawing away from the point of the scene, and how I described the scene to the actors was early on he was taking full control of the scene, and I wanted him to for the first half. But there's this moment where Ashley Lawhorn stars in this, where she has to like take control of the scene, and she reaches in and pulls a cigarette out of his mouth, like, you know, sassy way, and just takes charge. And the way he was bringing his performance was overpowering her. And I said, I tried to tell Ashley, I'm like, Ashley, when you take that, you're taking control of the scene, you're taking charge of the situation. And I said, Robert, you need to allow that to happen. I said, you need to tuck tail a little bit and bring that back. So it was a, you know, he and I had different visions of what that scene looked like. And once he understood what I was trying to do better, he was willing to dial back. And what we ended up getting is one of my favorite scenes I've ever directed. And I'll have to send it to you later so you can take a peek at that scene.
I get a preview.
Even without the music in and stuff like that, or the sound being done, I'll send you that scene. But it's a lot of fun. It's his performance is just so incredible in it, and so yeah. But that's kind of a good example of, and that's a healthy dynamic too. It's trust between the actor and director, and I trust Robert to bring it and really go crazy, but he also trusts me to say, "Hey, Robert, you're too far. Bring it back." You know, so that we can both get the best performance that fits for the story. And he's really happy with how the scene turned out, and I was so happy with his performance. And I was just texting him a couple days later. I'm just like, dude, I can't stop thinking about it. It's so good. I was like, it's my favorite.
I'm looking forward to it now.
movie.
You're hyping it up a lot.
You might watch it and you're like, this is terrible, man. This can't be seen by people.
No, I'd be like, I think you should send it with music, you know, or something like that.
Yeah.
I'd be like, when you're working, because I mean, yeah, you're starting to be able to like work with really more experienced people now, and that's awesome. But like, you know, not everybody, like particularly in the beginning when a filmmaker's starting out, they got to work with, you know, people that necessarily haven't really done a lot of acting. So tell me, when you're working with an inexperienced actor, how do you cultivate a good performance, or at least the performance you're looking for?
I think it starts with the casting process, finding a good actor. Because sometimes but also finding the right actor, because there can be good actors that don't fit for your vision.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not always personal. Like, you know, I think a lot of people assume it's always about looks, or it's always about, you know, favors or knowing people. But I think there's a level of trust. So I like to work with people I've worked with before, even if they've been in a minor role, then move them to a lead role, just because there's already rapport, which starts those kind of hard conversations of where do we form that character. To get the best performance, I think it's the legwork. It's those, you know, hour and a half long conversations where you guys I get to know them a little bit and how they tick and how they work through that, but also we get to deep dive into what we both want out of this character. And I jokingly call it pre-direction, because I'm not directing in the moment, but I am laying the groundwork and the layers of my vision to them and making sure they understand what I want and my expectations are. So that way, when they get to set, they feel comfortable already in who they are as this actor and character. And we've already built that trust where I can come over and, you know, quietly have a conversation one-on-one with them about, you know, how to up that intensity or bring it back, you know, rather than, you know, feel like I'm correcting them like a, you know, parent in front of, you know, cast and crew. Because sometimes I watch directors and it feels like they're just telling you it's wrong. like, and everybody's like, oh well,
Right.
clearly they don't, the actor's not good then. And it's like, it's not, it's just a breakdown of communication. So it's, I think, making sure your actors feel cared about and have dignity, and they feel safe. And and once your actor feels safe and they trust you, and you trust them, I think you can very easily get good performances out of it, because you know that there's no malintent. You trust that good performances are coming out of it, and that you guys can be real with each other, and just being upfront with them early on about what to expect.
Mm. That well, it kind of reminds me of one time I had a scene where there was a lot of dialogue, but he wasn't quite. He was quite in real life. He was quite a quirky person, and he was playing a very serious role. And so there was one scene in particular for this character and this actor where I could not find the right wording to remove the quirks. Because sometimes it's like I don't want to be like, okay, hey, don't do this, because like that's sort of
Yeah.
just part of their person. Sometimes parts of actors' personalities just end up coming out in the performance no
Yeah.
matter what, and
Yeah.
you don't want to be like, okay, don't be yourself, or something like that, or like
Yeah.
you want to shy away from, kind of embarrassing them.
Hmm.
I ended up doing, I think, 16 or 17 takes for that, and I just kept on
Oh wow.
rephrasing it and something like that, and it was just like, I at a certain point I had to call it. It's like, okay, I've done enough of this. He's done enough different versions of the dialogue in different places, so it's like, okay, well now I can rely on the fact that I know the edit can take care of this, because for some reason I
Yeah.
can't find the wording can't. My wording can't, like, fix the entire thing in one take. Do you have any experiences like that where it's like I can't quite get the right wording out, or like how did you solve that?
Yeah. Definitely, I've had experiences like that, and what I would even say is, in situations like that, I've had to sometimes lean into the quirks of our actor, because I think sometimes when you're working at a local level, and this is not to discredit our local actors are incredible, but sometimes with limited time, I lean into their quirks a little bit, and but I also have, when you build that trust with actors, and you can, when they're struggling with dialogue, they feel like they can tell you, or you feel like you can be like, hey, is that line not working for you? Because you're not buying, I don't feel like you're buying into that line. So how can I rephrase that with you in your words? I had Ryan Hanavan, who stars in A Balanced Breakfast and is also in Squalor. Um, she has a speech impediment,
Mm.
naturally, and so there are some words she has trouble saying, and but then there's also words sometimes in the script that I kind of played her character up to be a cheeky homeschool kid who
Hmm.
knows, uses,
We
sometimes
both know a
uses
lot of
words.
those, don't we?
We do, us homeschool guys do. And I think there were words in the script that she would not normally use, and she was like, she actually had the confidence to just tell me, Joe, I think this is a situation where I don't understand what this word means. And so I don't understand the gravity of like what you're wanting from me. And so, that was a situation actually where she just asked me, she's like, can you line read for me? Can you just tell me the tone you want me to use? Because I don't understand the line. And I tried to contextualize it for her, but it was like a life experience thing where she's just never had that life experience. Um, and I think it's harder for teen actors and kid actors a little bit in that way. So that's one time I've done a line read in years, where I just said, "Hey, this is tonally how I need you to say it," and
You had to break the taboo.
yeah, I had to break the taboo, but she asked me to. So
Oh,
um,
well, then it's,
yeah, so I guess it's okay in that situation. But
you got consent.
I yeah, I got consent. Like, don't do the line read. And then, but then there have been a lot of times where she was like, "That's not how I would say the line," and I'd be like, "Okay, well, tell me how you would say it,
Mm.
because I want you to buy in." And she would rephrase the line in a way that felt like her, and so I'd be like, "Okay, cool. Well, the same point gets across, because the subtext is there, the layers are there, the reactions there, So as long as the same point gets across, I don't worry as much about the wording itself. I worry about the emotion of it." And if she
Mm.
can buy in with a line that she's more comfortable saying, um, you know, I had a situation with Brandy Botkin where we were working on 0%, and there was a line she wasn't comfortable with saying. And I won't get into what the line is. I don't want to break confidence with her on that. There was a line that she wasn't comfortable saying, and she just I told me, she's like, yeah, I just don't think I can say that. I don't think I'm comfortable with it. I don't, feel good saying it. And she's like, can we rephrase it this way? And I said, yes, because ultimately your comfort as an actor is more important to me than my
Because that comes
wording.
out through the
Um,
performance, you know.
yes, absolutely. And she, and the way she, you've seen 0%, I would think at this point, and
Mm-hmm.
her performance in that's phenomenal. She's fantastic. I call her a human cheat code. Like, if you want a dramatic performance, and I need to cast her in a comedy or something sometime soon, just so she can, you know, flex a different muscle, because she's just so good at this, like, battered, beaten woman that she's been playing in all these different
Dude,
parts
somebody
and
needs
plays
to
the
write a
part so
comedy
well.
for these ladies because like every time like I bring like
Yeah.
a woman on and she's like the first I'm like, well, what kind of project do you think you'd like to do that might shine some other skills? They every one of them say comedy. I think they're all just
Mhm.
tired of crying, you know, and having these guys like male directors being
Uh,
like, I need you to be abused. I need you to be messed up. And then they're like, I
yeah.
just need a break. I feel like I'm living in a Nietzsche book.
Well, and that, it's funny. That's why I wrote Stoned. It was because I wanted to do a comedy again, but I wanted to do another dark comedy. And I had seen Ashley Longhorn being so bubbly and upbeat in all of her parts. I said, what if she's a raging psychopath? Like, that would be hilarious to me, because that would be funny in itself, to have someone everybody sees playing this bubbly, upbeat character, like, hey, what's up? And to full on, screaming with blood on her face. And, yeah, I, I found that amusing. So, I need to do the same with Brandy, get her in a comedy sometime soon.
Hmm.
Um, because it's funny, I'm talking with her about another project right now, and it involves being really dramatic. So I need to get some humor in there for her in some way, shape, or form,
Yeah.
so that she can get excited about it.
Based on your personal experience, what was the most uncomfortable thing that you had to learn to either acquire a skill set to overcome, or just personally be able to wrestle within yourself in order to actually be able to overcome it?
Oh man, comparing myself to others.
Mm.
I used to spend a lot of time watching what others were doing and worrying about what others were doing, and not being excited for what they're doing because they were ahead of me. And man, it gave me a complex. I spent a lot of negative time, I mean, a lot of emotion and negative feelings on that, because it's not happening fast enough for me. It's not, and what I had to come to realize was that it's all a different journey for everybody. Not everybody has the same set of circumstances. You have to have persistence, talent, and luck. And it, your luck is eventually going to run out, but if you have persistence and talents, it can come back. If you have luck, but you don't persist and use your talents, you don't sharpen those talents, when that luck runs out, you know it's going to run out because you're not very good. You know,
Right.
so I chose to, get married. I got married in my early 20s. I have a family. I don't want to live in LA. I don't want to live in New York. I don't want to live in Atlanta. I like the Midwest. I like it here. And I could advance my career a lot further if I moved west. I could advance my career further if I went to New York. I could advance it further if I went to Atlanta. I've watched friends who I mentored in directing a little bit, you know, they're having a more successful career now than I am. And I'm thrilled for them.
Mm.
There was, probably 10 years ago, I would have been kicking myself over. And I've been so, well, why do they get to have that? And now I'm thrilled for them, because our seasons in life are different. Right now, my main goal and my main job is to be a good husband and good father to my children. I've got two daughters and a third that will be born later this month.
Oh,
Um,
congratulations.
and thank you. Yeah, we're baby number three, another girl, and so I'm a girl dad, and man, my job is to be a good father to my girls, and I love making movies and I love producing and directing, but they're not my main priority. And there will become a day where my girls are all grown, and then maybe filmmaking will be my only priority,
Hmm.
but right now raising them is my priority, and making movies on the side is just the cherry on top of something I get to enjoy and get to work in the field. And um, so, overcoming comparing myself to others was a huge challenge, and
Right.
to be happy for others' success and not be angry with my circumstances. And I think that's the best advice I can give the young filmmakers, is get through that quick, because I think we all have a little bit of that where we see it, we're like, man, why them? Why not me? Right? Why
Yeah.
I have the talent, I can do this too. And instead of just being thrilled, I just a kid that I have been bringing on some of my sets. He's been working for me part time shooting weddings and stuff, and he just got hired to DP a low budget feature, and he's gonna get make some decent money.
Oh, sweet.
And I was stoked for him, man. I'm so proud of him. He texted me that yesterday, and I was like, man, I'm so stoked for you. And he thanked me for helping him along. He's like, I wouldn't know what I do about cameras and cinematography if it weren't just working with you. And I was like, man, you had it. You just had to get an opportunity.
Hmm.
And so, being happy for your friends and happy for your peers, um, I think it's a whole lot better than, harboring, hatred toward them,
I
you
see a
know?
lot of creatives though, like that do go down that the grinding path of their career. But the other balance of being a creative is that you need to experience life in order to actually fuel your creativity. And I
Yeah.
do wonder how many of them eventually or are looking back and being like, maybe I should have done some more things in my personal life that I would have been all very fulfilled as. Not necessarily more or less. I mean, everyone's different. But I wonder how many of them get hindsight FOMO. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, and, uh, I think you can sometimes see it reflected in art. I've watched some filmmakers who maybe don't have families or didn't, start a family or miss some of those opportunities, try to make movies about those things, and they don't quite hit the mark because they don't have that lived experience. Um, so, I think there's, in some ways, I think to tell certain stories, you have to have some lived experience. But then
Mm-hmm.
there's also the types of stories where you're like, I want to explore something that's completely opposite of my world and my worldview, and just to explore those routes and see what that world's like, because it's interesting. Stoned is not my lived experience. I'm not a stoner. I'm not obviously not a psych. I hope I'm not a psychopath. I haven't been
Ashley
diagnosed or
remarked on
missed.
that, I think.
Yeah, yeah. So even on set, they were all trolling me because I'm not a stoner. I even had to get help from my assistant director on kind of directing the bong scenes, because I was like, I don't know how to pack a bong. I don't know, it's not my world. But at the same time, it was a world I wanted to explore. I was just like, hey, these are characters that I find interesting, and let me learn a little bit about this culture and this world. And I sent my script to several stoner friends, and I'm like, hey, how's my dialogue? And they're like, it seems like it's written by a guy who's never been a stoner. And I was like, cool, help me with the dialogue. What terminology should I use? What kind of crap should I throw in there that feels authentic to your view of things? And so that I can learn and grow as a filmmaker and get a new perspective. And so I think there are worlds for that. But then going back to people who miss out on those pieces of life, and then they try to make a slice of life film, and they try to tell a story from a perspective they've never had. I think a parent story hits totally different when it's created by a parent.
Yeah.
And I don't mean to it's not disparaging anybody who doesn't have kids. Um, but I want to use The Last of Us as a reference. Have you played The Last of Us?
I saw. Well, I never. I was an Xbox guy. Well, funny. Well, I was
Oh,
always
okay.
a generation, but I did watch the first season.
Yeah, the show is fantastic. It's a really good adaptation of the game. And I remember as a teenager when that game came out, everybody was debating, did Joel make the right decision? And
Mm-hmm.
you know, did you know, did he, did he sacrifice all the world for one life? And there was a part of me as a teenager that was like, oh yeah, maybe he did make the wrong decision. Maybe, but I understand why, maybe. And I could be empathetic. And now that I have daughters, I wouldn't even second guess it.
Hmm.
Like I wouldn't. My little girls mean everything. For a chance to save the world, would sacrifice them.
Hmm.
For a chance. And it's a parent perspective. It's just you don't understand that emotion until you've been in it. And it sounds like I'm disparaging what other people might feel, but until you've actually held your own baby in your hands and loved that thing, oh, man, that's an experience that I never thought that I wanted to be a parent that bad. Man, I wouldn't trade it for the world. And that
Hmm.
was like the thing I was most passionate about. And that's actually kind of what I tried to show in my short of balanced breakfast was the love for my kids.
Yeah, I think there's too much. Well, especially because, well, to veer somewhat off topic, but kind of not really. It's like our generation is, we're not reproducing at all, really.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of curious to see what art ends up reflecting on or ends up thinking about in hindsight of this current culture climate that we're in like 10, 20 years down the line. um, and there's you need a little bit of life in order to have life as a creative. And I think that's the biggest downfall is that some creatives fall into is that they veer off way too much into the hypotheticals that they dream about. And then that's where the art comes from instead of just actually experiencing life because they're worried about their career versus the art itself. Yeah. Well, Joe, it's been great having you on again.
Thank you.
I'm
Let's
glad that
no
your
audio.
stuff's yeah. How's when do you think Squalor's going to come out?
I'm hoping by May we're gonna probably announce an event of some kind soon.
Mm,
Just to get it in front of some eyes in person because it's nothing like seeing a movie in the theaters. And then I should be making announcements soon about my next projects after that. I'm currently in pre-production on my first feature.
rubs
So
hands oh my gosh, I can't say it
yeah,
mischievously.
hoping that I'm more so speaking it into the universe and we're going to make it happen, whether or not, if it's at a snail's pace, one little bit at a time, or if it's all at once because some, financier is like, hey, here's a bucket of money.
Right.
we're going to,
That'd be great.
we're going to make it happen, man. I hope it's the latter, but I'll take the former.
Do you have any final thoughts you want to leave with the audience?
Just be a positive member of the film community and don't compare yourself to others and enjoy the moment and build each other up and be excited for what's happening in the local film scene.
Well, Joe, thanks for coming on.
Hey, thanks you so much, man.